no one will make a start.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're live now, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to North Tyneside Council's Planning Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Frank Lott, chairing the meeting. The meeting's being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel to enable members of the press and public to observe the meeting, and I welcome anyone who's watching. Before we move on to the agenda, I'd first like to make it clear who's participating in the meeting and explain how we intend to conduct the meeting. To make it clear who's in the meeting, I'd like to ask everyone present to confirm their attendance at the meeting, and to do this, I'll now call out the names of the members of the committee. After I call your name, please turn on your microphone and camera and introduce yourself so we can be sure that you can be seen and heard. Councillor Ken Barry. Ken, did you switch your microphone on? Well, perhaps we've lost Councillor Ken Barry. Councillor Trish Brady.
Councillor Trish Brady, Councillor for Northumberland Ward and Deputy Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, that reassures me. I know I'm not alone now. Councillor Linda Dark.
Yes, Councillor Linda Dark here, Frank.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra Graham.
Hello, Councillor Sandra Graham, Councillor for Whitley Bay Ward. Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Muriel Green. Not yet, but we do know that Muriel's trying to join us. Councillor Paul Richardson.
Good morning, thank you. Hello, Paul Richardson, Councillor for Monks Eaton North Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Willie Samuel.
Morning, Councillor Willie Samuel from Cullercoats Ward.
And Councillor John Sterling.
Hello, hello, Councillor John Sterling from Churton Ward.
Thank you. Now, also online.
Councillor Barry is with us.
Are you with us, Councillor Barry? Thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
Good, pleased to welcome you. Also present we have the following officers, and I'll invite them to introduce themselves. After I call your name, please turn on your microphone and camera and introduce yourself. Now, Julie Lawson.
Hello, Julie Lawson. I'm a Principal Planning Officer in the Planning Department.
Thank you. Aidan Dobinson Booth.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Aidan Dobinson Booth. I'm also a Principal Planning Officer in the Development Management Team.
Thank you. Dave McCall.
Hello, I'm Dave McCall, Highways Officer.
Thank you. Claire Wilson.
Good morning, Claire Wilson here, Environmental Health Officer. I am representing Environmental Health.
Thank you. And Tessa Crowe.
Good morning, Tessa Crowe, Legal Advisor to the Planning Committee.
Do we have any other officers apart from Michael Robson, obviously?
Yes. Morning, everyone. Michael Robson, clerk to the committee.
Are there any other officers present? Okay, thanks. We've got other officers joining the meeting just to provide technical support and cover in the event of connections being lost. To ensure that the meeting runs smoothly, can I remind people taking part to turn off your microphone and camera when you're not speaking. Only speak when you're invited to do so. If any member or officer wishes to speak, please use the hand raised button. And if you don't have that, you can use the chat facility. And if you can't chat, then you have to let me know by interrupting. If any participant's connection is lost, we'll adjourn the meeting for a short period of time to allow the connection to be restored. We'll now move on to the business of the agenda. Can I ask for any apologies for absence?
So we'll have received apologies from Councillors Burtis and Councillor Wheatman, and as you've mentioned, Councillor Green, we understand, is trying to join the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And have we any substitute members?
Not aware of any substitutes, no.
Right, item 3. Do any committee members have any interests that they would like to declare in relation to items on the agenda? No hands have been raised, so we'll take it that there are no interests to declare. Item 4, the minutes. We're asked to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the last meeting held on the 15th of December. Can I ask any members who disagree that they're a correct record to indicate, please? Otherwise, we'll take silence as assent, and that's agreed to. Thank you. Item 5. We now move on to give consideration to the planning applications detailed in the planning officer's reports, and in doing so, members are asked to have regard to the guidance set out in pages 7 to 10 of the agenda papers. That moves us on to item 8, the first planning application, which is on land south of Elton Street and Wallsend. So can I hand you over to Julie?
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located on the south side of Elton Street East within Wallsend Town Centre. It was previously occupied by housing, but this was cleared some years ago, and the site is now grassed with trees, which you can see there. And most of these trees, but not all, have a tree preservation order on them. They're the lime trees that are covered by the tree preservation order. As you can see, there are car parks to the west of the site, the south and the east of the site, with housing to the north. The Forum Shopping Centre lies beyond the eastern car park, while the western car park separates the site from residential properties on Thames Gardens, and that's these properties here. That's just a street view image from Elton Street East. The application is for a new medical centre with associated clinical support, offices, parking and landscaping. The proposed building is 2 to 3 stories in height and located in the western half of the site. That's here. There will be a car park to the east with access from the existing access road for the adjacent multi-storey car park. I'll just take us through some of the plans. The proposed medical centre would contain a GP surgery and a community health support hub, and it would allow 2 existing medical centres, which are on Portugal Place and Park Road, to be amalgamated. And that's just some visuals which we'll come back to. The ground floor would contain the GP surgery, reception and waiting area, and the upper floors would provide consulting rooms for the community health support hub, administration rooms and staff facilities. And we've received 4 objections to the proposal, which are set out in the agenda. And the main issues for members to consider are the principle of the proposal, the impact on surrounding occupiers, the impact on the character and appearance of the site, whether there is sufficient car parking and access provided, and the impact on trees and ecology. Just take us back to the site plan. So the principle of the proposed development, the application site is located within Wallsend Town Centre, but it's outside the primary shopping area. The local plan identifies the site and the adjacent plot to the south as being suitable for new retail development, but this allocation reflects the planning permission for the Aldi supermarket, which at the time the policy was adopted had yet to be built, but obviously which has now been completed. The use as a medical centre is considered to be an appropriate use for this location, where it would complement existing facilities within the town centre. And it would accord with the aims of seeking to improve the health and well-being of North Tyneside's residents, improve access to medical facilities and enhance the range of services within the town centre. And the site is a highly sustainable location, close to good transport links, other services and residential properties. So in officer opinion, the principle is acceptable. Just take us back onto the aerial so you can see obviously the site here and its surroundings. In terms of the impact on surrounding occupiers, the medical centre will be located approximately 22 metres from existing residential properties on Thames Gardens and on the northern side of Elton Street East. Proximity to this existing housing has been taken into account in the building design. If it just take us to this image here, so this is from Elton Street East, the northwestern part of the site. So whilst the majority of the building is 3 stories in height, that northwest section's been reduced to 2 stories and inset from the northern boundary to help reduce its massing when viewed from those properties. So that's in that area there. So in officer opinion, the impact on existing residents in terms of light and outlook is acceptable. In terms of the impact on the privacy of Thames Gardens, which is over to the west, it's also considered to be acceptable given the separation distance and that these west-facing first and second floor windows mainly relate to corridors. And the building line of properties on the north side of Elton Street, which you can see there, it's staggered, meaning that these properties are considered to be well distanced from the development. Conditions are recommended by Environmental Health to protect residential amenity, and its officer advised that the impact on adjacent residents is acceptable subject to conditions. In terms of the impact on character and appearance, a design and access statement was submitted with the application, which explains that the 3-storey massing of the building echoes the library building further east on Elton Street East, with the building stepping down to 2 storeys in height on that northwestern corner to better relate to the 2-storey residential development, which is at that side of the site. And the flat roof is designed to keep the building's height to a minimum and to distinguish it as a civic building in contrast to the pitched roof form of the neighbouring housing. And the materials include brick with render, glazing and cladding to break up the front and side elevations. And there's also an internal courtyard area, which you can see from the floor plans there, and that to add light and openness inside the building. A plant enclosure is proposed on the top of the building as well. The design officer raised concern about the height of that, suggesting it should be no higher than 1 metre. The applicants advised that it needs to be 3 metres high, and they have submitted these visuals to show that it would not be visible from Elton Street East or the adjacent housing due to its position on the southern side of the roof. And given its limited visibility, it's officer opinion that the height is acceptable, subject to some form of screening being provided and the appearance of the enclosure being agreed, and these details are proposed as a condition. It's considered that the development relates well to the surrounding area and scale and design are in keeping with the site and its surroundings. Taking us back to the site plan, just have a look at the car parking and the access. Car park containing 37 spaces and 4 disabled bays is proposed, and cycle parking is also proposed in this area here. The site will be accessed from John Street there, and the Highways Network Manager has no objections, advising that the site is within Wallsend Town Centre with excellent links to public transport, and that additional parking is available nearby if required. And its officer advised that the proposal is acceptable on highway grounds. In terms of impact on trees and biodiversity, just take us on to the landscaping plan. This is the landscaping plan. There are 11 trees along the northern boundary with the tree preservation order on them. These are all lime trees. 6 of these trees require removal and all are classed as category B trees. It was originally proposed to remove 10 of the trees, but the applicant has amended the scheme in order to retain a further 4 trees. And to compensate for this loss, it's proposed to plant 2 replacement trees on the northern boundary, which you can see there, and 2 trees adjacent to the site access. And a hedgerow would be planted along the site's northern, eastern and southern boundaries, with further areas of shrub planting as well on the site. And the applicant has advised that due to the dimensions of the building, it is not possible to relocate it to allow for the retention of any further trees. And the applicant has also submitted this visual which is looking from the north from Elton Street East to show which trees along that street scene would be retained. So you can see these limes here would be retained. That white beam isn't part of the tree preservation order, that would be removed. These are the lime trees that would be removed, and those ones at the other end of the site, that'll be the northeastern part of the site, would be retained. The landscape architect has requested that an additional tree is planted in the northeast corner of the site, so that overall only 1 tree would be lost from the site. This has been agreed by the applicant, and the details can be controlled through a condition. And the landscape architect has also recommended conditions to protect the trees during construction. And the biodiversity officer has no objections subject to conditions. So subject to these conditions, it's considered that the proposal is acceptable in terms of its impact on landscaping. In terms of other issues, surface water drainage will be attenuated via a storage tank and permeable paving, and the local lead flood authority recommends conditional approval. And the applicant has agreed to provide apprenticeship opportunities during the construction phase, and a condition is recommended for this. So in conclusion, the development would bring benefits, including much needed medical facilities. The medical centre would provide a complementary offer to the existing shopping centre and opportunities to increase the vitality of the centre through greater linked trips and footfall. And it's considered that the proposal is acceptable, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Julie.
Sorry, I'll keep that up. Sorry.
Can I invite questions from members? No one's indicated. Can I ask Dave McCall From the report, the objections centre around parking, traffic congestion and traffic flow. Would you like to comment on this, please, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was quite a big development, as Julie pointed out, at the Aldi site some years ago. And to be honest, with the parking that was already at the Forum Centre anyway, which was probably underutilised at the time, and with this new car park, it's a lot of parking for a town centre. So I think this new development here, which, you know, whilst it's designated parking, doesn't meet the parking standards, there's certainly enough choice within the area to park. I mean, in terms of traffic generation and what have you, it's a town centre. There will be traffic in the AM and PM peaks, as you'd expect. But in terms of sustainability, this site is ideal for this type of location. And I would imagine, you know, compared with a lot of kind of old terraced houses which have been converted to dockers, this is certainly a better location and a better facility than those type of things.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions? Again, no one's indicated. Oh yes, sorry, I beg your pardon. Linda, Councillor Dark.
Thanks, Chair. I was wondering if this proposed medical centre will replace the two that are already there. Will they be pulled down, or is this as well as, not instead of?
What the applicant has advised is that it would replace the Portugal Place Health Centre and the Park Road Health Centre, and they've set out in their supporting statements, that their planning statement, just the reasons for that. I think I've just noted some of them down. Both of those existing practices have more patients than the intended capacity of them, and there's too few consulting rooms and too few parking spaces associated with them, and they've got cramped waiting areas and no scope for extension. And so it's to amalgamate both of those practices onto this new site.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. I note that the Biodiversity Officer hasn't made any objection to this. I just wondered what the planting scheme was for the hedgerow that you mentioned. Is that native species or ornamental shrubs?
Thank you. I will just check the conditions. What we'd normally do is seek a landscape scheme. Yes, we've asked for a detailed landscaping to be submitted, and we would want native species with that, and that would have to be agreed by the Biodiversity Officer and the landscape architect. So I think that's condition 27 in the agenda. So yes, we would want native species with that as well, and we would make sure they were happy with any submitted scheme for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can I invite comment now, please, from members? Councillor Brady.
I agree that this is a helpful development. It is replacing two rather dated and inaccessible medical practices in the town centre, and I think it's a useful development in the town centre, which will be accessible both internally as a building and by public transport and by cars. I'm pleased to hear that the biodiversity aspect has been taken into account, because this is albeit it was previously housing, a green area in the town centre, and I think it's good that we're considering the biodiversity aspect of it. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Dark.
Yes, Councillor Brady said everything that I wanted to say. I'd welcome this and will be voting in favour of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'll be supporting this application as well, particularly in view of the fact that the developers have increased the number of trees that they are to reinstate from the application.
Hello, Muriel. It's Dave Parkin
from
Democratic Services. Just wondering how we will get on
nice to see that they've
regarding trying to get back into planning committee.
Greater care
and
for
if
the
there's anything
environment.
else we can do to help.
The recommendation is set out on page 43, and essentially it is that the committee indicates it's minded to approve the application and then hand over to the Head of Environment, Housing and Leisure. Councillor Barry, your hand's up.
Just, I lost connection at the very start when Julie was talking. I'm not sure I can vote because I didn't get the full.
I don't know.
I'm afraid you're unable to vote because you have missed part of the presentation, and members do need to be present for all of it. I'm sorry about that, but that's what the rules say. So, can I ask those who
connected
are in favour of this application to indicate when Michael calls out your name, please? So, Michael, can you call out the roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Brady.
For.
Councillor Dark.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Lott.
Can I just amend what I've just said, because it's actually the recommendation is set out on page 24 of the agenda papers, and that is that the application be submitted to the conditions set out on pages 24 to 31. So could I ask you to start the vote again, please, Michael? I've jumped to the next application.
Sorry,
so just to be absolutely correct, I think we should start again.
So this is yes, for and against the recommendation as set out by Councillor Lott. Councillor Brady.
For.
Councillor Dark.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Lott.
For.
Councillor Richardson.
For.
Councillor Samuel.
For.
And Councillor Sterling.
For.
That's 7 votes to none, unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, and I apologise for that confusion. Can we now move on to item 7 on page 43, which is Springfield Park in Forest Hall. Aidan, can you take us through this, please?
Aidan, can I just check, do you want me to keep the presentation up, or do you want to get control of it?
No, I'm happy for you just to keep the presentation up, and if you just kind of follow us through when I get the relevant parts, that'll be fine.
Just before you start, can I welcome Muriel Green to the meeting, who has her hand up?
Thank you so much. I've had 20 minutes on the phone with some wonderful operators, IT people who've sorted it all out for me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Carry on, Aidan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, this is item 7, page 43 of the agenda papers, and it is for it's Eastern Villas in Forest Hall. Sorry, just bear with me. Yeah, and it's a change of use of a vacant former care home to provide 11 residential apartments and associated parking, landscaping, and other associated infrastructure. But moving on to now consider the description of the site. The site to which this application relates was formerly occupied by Springfield Care Home. Existing residential development is to the north, and allotments are to the east. Parking is provided to the south of the site. There are a small number of existing trees and groups of trees located along the southern and western boundaries of the site, which are protected by a tree preservation order. The main issues for members to consider are principle of development, impact on amenity, both visual and residential, impact on highway safety, impact on biodiversity, and other issues. There have been 2 objections and 1 letter of support, and these are summarised on page 75. Okay, moving on now to consider the principle of development. The application site is a previously developed site and is not allocated for any specific use in the local plan. It is within proximity of Forest Hall District Centre, which offers a range of local facilities. Proposed development would bring a vacant building back into use, and in this respect, it would comply with the advice in National Planning Policy Framework. Members therefore need to determine whether the principle of development is acceptable, and it's officer advice that it is. Moving on now to consider the 5-year housing and land supply. Although the council does have a 5-year housing and land supply, this would make a small but welcome additional contribution to that supply. Impact upon neighbours. Now, the objections received from number 1 Eastern Villas, which is located to the north there, is noted. Members are advised that the applicants amended the plans to omit a unit from what would have been the second floor in the roof. This removes the need for the roof lights in the northern roof slope. Therefore, the only alterations proposed in the north elevation now relates to ground floor utilising existing openings. Specifically, 2 doors are going to two windows. Currently, there are 5 openings along the northern flank, and these, as I say, these 2 doors will be replaced by windows. The objector to the north says that these windows will be sited approximately 0.3 metres above the existing boundary. Whilst this may cause some loss of privacy to part of their garden, it's not considered that the impact will be so sufficient as to warrant refusal of the application. In terms of work affecting existing trees, this is set out in detail in paragraphs 10.18 and 10.21 in your agenda papers. The Council's landscape architect does not object and recommends a number of conditions. Subject to these conditions, it's considered that the proposal would not have an adverse impact. The Manager of Environmental Health has been consulted and does not object. Subject to conditions to control the hours of construction, which will be condition 3, and dust mitigation, which is proposed condition 4, it's the view of officers that the proposal would not adversely affect neighbours. Members need to consider whether the proposed development is acceptable in terms of its design and its layout, and also its impact on residential amenity. It's officer advice that the proposed number of units can be comfortably accommodated within the site without significantly affecting the TPO to trees or adversely affecting neighbours. Members need to balance the impacts of the development against the benefits of bringing a vacant building back into use. Okay, moving on now to consider the issue of highways. The Council's Highway Network Manager has been consulted and recommends conditional approval. The level of parking is not in accordance with the current standards. However, this application relates to a change of use, and the level proposed is considered to be acceptable. A small amount of overspill parking on at Springfield Park is unlikely to have an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Furthermore, the site has reasonable links to public transport, and cycle parking will also be provided. Members need to consider whether the proposal is acceptable in terms of its impact on highway safety and the wider highway network. It's officer advised, and on balance, it is. Moving on now to consider biodiversity, the Council's biodiversity officer considers the building to be a moderate suitability for roosting bats. Following the amendments, there will be no works to the roof, and therefore the proposal would not, subject to conditions, have an adverse impact on bats. The site is outside the 6-kilometre buffer, the Northumbrian Coastal Special Protection Area, and the applicant has agreed to pay the tariff, which is £151 per dwelling, towards coastal mitigation. Members need to consider whether the proposal is acceptable in terms of biodiversity. Subject to conditions and the coastal mitigation contribution, it's officer advice that it is. Moving on now to consider the Section 106 contributions. These are set out in full on page 43 of your agenda papers. In conclusion, therefore, the proposal would bring a vacant building back into use in a sustainable location. It would not adversely affect neighbouring occupiers, and therefore it's recommended on balance that planning permission should be granted, subject to a Section 106 legal agreement and also conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Aidan. Aidan, perhaps you could clarify for committee members, in the recommendation on page 43, it says coastal mitigation £1,661. I think it should actually be £6,061. Is that correct?
I had picked this up, yeah, you're right, because it's 151 times the 11.
Right.
It's 11 units. So if I just do a quick calculation, I hadn't noticed this. Okay. Yeah, so the coastal mitigation contribution, you're absolutely right, is 1,661, not as it's indicated, sort of like 1.1 million or whatever. So yes, it is £1,661.
Okay, thank you. With that clarified, any members have any questions? Right. No one's indicated they wish to question. I'm not surprised. It's a very straightforward application. Does any member wish to comment on the application? Councillor Dark.
Thanks, Chair. I would just like to say, during construction, if we could ensure that the builders adhere to the permitted times, please, because, you know, sometimes they cause all sorts of problems when they work early and work late. Thank you.
That's a legitimate request, and if they wish to vary the building times, then they have to apply to us under this special COVID. Presumably that still applies, the special COVID arrangements, does it?
Yes, it's my understanding that it does. As it stands, we're recommending in condition 3 the standard working hours. So it would be at 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 p.m. on Saturdays, with no working on Sundays or bank holidays. But yes, if they wish to vary it, there is still provision for them to come forward to do so.
Okay, thank you for that. No one's indicated, so we'll now move to the vote. This recommendation is on page 43. It's recommended that members indicate they're minded to approve. Can I ask Michael to conduct the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barry?
You have to, Joanne.
Councillor Brady? Councillor Dark? Councillor Gray?
Yeah.
Councillor Green?
4.
Councillor Lott?
4.
Councillor Richardson?
4.
Councillor Samuel?
4.
And Councillor Sterling?
4.
That's unanimous, 9 votes to none.
Right, that's approved. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your contributions and your attendance, and that concludes the